Good evening to you. Warm welcome to KTN Prime. Tonight we're focusing on the top stories right across the country, including that crisis that is in the health sector that is affecting counties all over the country. Plus tonight we are looking at South Sudan. Is there a deal that was signed? What does this mean for the citizens of South Sudan? We'll be speaking to South Sudan's ambassador to Kenya in a little bit. First, let's take a look at our top stories tonight.
Sisi tunataka mshahara. Hatutaki kitu kingine.
Yet another strike. Nurses in Eldoret and Nyeri down their tools. Is the situation getting out of hand? Deal or no deal? No extra time for last change South Sudan peace talks?
Sisi watu tunapata tu habari. Majamiwa ya so and so. Hatuelewi. Sasa wakubwa wetu ndio wanaelewa.
The collapsed sugar industry, who is to blame for the cane industry downfall?
Flower Girl ndio kwanza receive president, even before president wa hapo, like niye ndio mira ya kwanza. So ifai tu kupotea tu hivyo, not ati alipwe pesa ama nini, but there's something good that can be done to her.
No more flowery affairs, living in anguish after dining with kings. Many thanks for joining us. A sign language interpreter. The bottom end of your screen is Meresha Owiti. We begin our coverage with the continued healthcare crisis in the country, and patients in several regions across the country continue to suffer, with some being on the brink of death following the nurses' strike that appears to be taking a spiral effect in the country. Today, more than 200 nurses in Nyeri and Eldoret counties did not go to work, demanding their July salaries be paid in full. Betty Kialo kicks off our coverage tonight.
Sisi tunataka mshahara. Hatutaki kitu kingine.
Clear-cut sentiments whose impact is being felt by patients in Uasin Gishu County. Today, the health workers made good their threat to go on strike and kept off health facilities, decrying the failure by the county government to pay their July salaries.
Majority of these members you are seeing here come from rural health facilities, meaning now that the rural health facilities is incapacitated. No work is going on there.
But as the health workers vowed not to go to work, patients in various hospitals in the county were deeply affected. They queued for hours on end, waiting patiently for services that never came.
So travel kuja hapa, nimefika kadhaa hapa, sijapata mtu ndani, almost 15 minutes. So ninajaribu kuulizia, wananiambia they are operating, lakini unfortunately sijapata usaidizi wote so far.
It was the same situation in Nyeri County, where more than 200 nurses went on strike, lamenting that the county government failed to increase their pay as agreed.
Services are paralyzed in the whole of Nyeri County. So, what we want to urge the community at large is that if you have a patient in the hospital, just know that there are no services. Go there, know what you're going to do with your patient.
They also complained of long and strenuous working hours as a result of shortage of staff in the county's health facilities. In Nakuru, nurses failed to heed to the return to work formula reached upon by the Nakuru County Government, Kenya National Union of Nurses and Labour Officers. People seeking medical assistance were turned away as patients in the wards continued to suffer. They were expected to report to work by last Friday afternoon, which they never did. Betty Kialo, KTN News.
Let's stay with that story, and tonight on our big question tonight we're asking you, do you think county governments are overwhelmed in the provision of health services? Do you think county governments are overwhelmed in the provision of health services? Let us know what you think. You can tweet us at KTN News, at KTN Kenya, and me as well at Linda Gutu. I'd love to sample your views during this bulletin. Right, let's cross borders now. South Sudan's President Salva Kiir failed to sign a peace deal proposed by regional leaders, saying he requires more time. IGAD mediator for the regional Seyum Mesfin said Kiir's side required 2 weeks before signing the peace deal that was accepted by the South Sudanese rebels. The mediator said the South Sudanese will return to Addis Ababa in the next 15 days to finalize the peace agreement.
By the time South Sudan's rebel leader Riek Machar and Pagan Amum, the Secretary General of the ruling Sudan's People's Liberation Movement, took to the podium to put pen to paper, it had been evident that many had anticipated this moment. Most of them clinging to some optimism over whether both warring factions would agree to finally bring the conflict to an end. The deal was signed on the very last day, perhaps a clear indication that the mediation team had not had a bed of roses as they tried to meet the demands of both teams. IGAD Plus, the expanded mediation team from the regional body IGAD and several other interested nations, had for months been engaged in shuttle diplomacy, with sharing of power being the bone of contention. And even as rebel leader Riek Machar was invited to the podium to speak after signing the deal, he could not help but express his disappointment over the fact that President Salva Kiir did not sign the deal personally. Lead mediator Seyum Mesfin was however quick to clarify that only former detainees and rebels signed the deal, stating that government had its reservations and would sign it in 15 days. Details of the deal still scanty, but sources who attended the historic signing say that it established a hybrid court to prosecute those accused of crimes in South Sudan. The biggest beneficiaries of the peace deal will, however, be the people of South Sudan, human rights organizations say, as thousands have been killed and millions left displaced, forced to survive on relief food supplied by the United Nations. Ian Wafula, KTN News.
So what does the government of South Sudan hope to achieve in 15 days? Is there commitment from the leaders as well? And what will it take to ensure there is peace in that country? Later on in this bulletin, I will be speaking to South Sudan's ambassador to Kenya, Ambassador Mariano Deng Ngor. He will be trying to help us understand if there was a deal, when this deal is expected to be signed, because they say they need 15 more days. What do they hope to achieve in those 15 days? So you need to watch out for that interview that will be coming your way in just a few minutes. Now, let's bring you back to the country. Opposition party ODM will not support the December election date, and at the same time will oppose the extension of the 27th of August deadline for bills that have a 5-year implementation period after the enactment of the new constitution. Party leader Raila Odinga says it is the failure of Jubilee government to have the bills ready, saying the delay is a political tactic by the Uhuru government to sabotage implementation of the constitution. These were parts of the resolutions after a 2-day retreat in Machakos County.
We don't want this 1-year extension. First, it is a unilateral decision of the Jubilee without consulting any major stakeholders. And we are a very major stakeholder on this issue. Why were they not able to meet the deadline of 5 years? We think that it's deliberate, that they do not want to actually bring these bills into effect. So we have said we are not going to assist them.
We also reject the bill to change election date as contained in the private members' bill, that is, this is before the National Assembly, which is in the second reading.
Susan Wangari was a notable flower girl in her young days. She received distinguished guests on state arrivals, including the late Nelson Mandela and often retired President Daniel Arap Moi. But over 2 decades later, and her life is not as flowery. She talks to KTN's Sharon Momanyi on her big dream of meeting the man she always met with flowers.
When U.S. President Barack Obama arrived at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport on his historic visit to Kenya, a young girl stole the show minutes after his touchdown. 8-year-old Joanne Mamaitha, fondly remembered as Obama's flower girl, would be the first person to meet the powerful leader on his arrival. A little over 30 kilometers from the airport and through a rough road to her homestead in Ruiru town, Susan Wangari was watching. The scene, a stark deja vu.
Niko napeana frequent, you know, because anytime home ilipigia simu kuna president anakam, It was either me or maybe another girl. But at least najua nimeenda mara mingi because someone like Moi nimempatia almost 10 times. Mandela nimempatia.
With all eyes on Nyanga Maitha, Susan could not have
Obama came, calls zilikuwa frequent sana kwangu. So they were like, Suzy, iliendaje? Ona, unajua tukiona wa Maitha tunakukumbuka. So all Bernardians that I grew up, or those people who knew, nilikuwa napeana. At least a number called me and I was like, alafu they are like, ay, kwani yani ilienda? Suzy hadi umepatia prezo.
Incidentally, Susan lived in the Thomas Bernardo's children's home at the time. Young Wamaitha also finds home at the Mama Ngina children's home. But what did the job entail?
Sit in an office or somewhere. I walk towards her. I should look at her, smile and tell her, karibu to Kenya. Take me, narudi kwa lounge, nakula cake. Then after the function, it was wrapped, naenda nayo home. So nikifika home, people knew lazima nikuje na cake.
At the moment, Susan's life is hardly a bed of roses. With a 6-year-old daughter to fend for and no employment, she does odd jobs to get by.
Because napeleka kwa watu, shule maybe wakinitisha, and most likely mashule teachers, tomatoes, hata asali hivyo, ikaanguka. And sasa nika opt, sasa anything yenye mtu anaweza kuwa nayo, meniba anaweza niambia, leo ni aje, kama ufue manguo.
She hopes to meet former President Moi at least once more. This time, she may not have flowers to present.
Ningepata prezo surely, ama Moi, ama nani mwenye ananikumbuka. Tungenego, tungenegotiate at least naambia baba, na kwa my area, ni aje.
Sharma Manyi, KTN News.
To some good news now, and once again KTN's flag is flying high. Our very own news anchor will go down the history as the first journalist to win BBC's Comrade Moore Award. That journalist is none other than Nancy Kachingira. Nancy was picked by several BBC News editors for the award that attracted over 200 applicants drawn from across the continent. Her accolade comes with a 3-month stint with BBC in London, where she will be able to present news to a larger BBC African audience on radio, TV and online. The Comla Award was established to honor former BBC News anchor Comrade Moore, who passed away at the age of 41 and worked as BBC to Africa News anchor. Nancy grew up in Uganda, later continued with her studies at the Makerere University, and with more than 14 years of experience, Nancy has also worked across Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania.
This is the show that keeps you in the know and brings together global events and local significance.
Nancy's passion and understanding of African journalism truly embodies everything the award commemorates.
Walking through those doors has been the only thing that has given them a renewed sense of hope and a positive attitude for the future.
Nancy really impressed me with her street-smart energy, especially about digital media.
All this achievement, what is it for? What is the legacy that you want to leave?
Nancy will now have the chance to tell an African story to the BBC's audiences across the world and continue the legacy of Comrade Moore.
And of course, from all of us here, is congratulations to Nancy Kachingira. You're watching KTN Prime, and we thank you for staying with us. Let's remind you of a big question tonight. We're asking you, do you think county governments are overwhelmed in the provision of health services? Do you think county governments are overwhelmed in the provision of health services? Let us know what you think. Tweet us at KTN News, at KTN Kenya, and of course you can tweet me as well at Linda Ogutu. I'd love to sample your views during this bulletin. Alright, so we're focusing on South Sudan. Is there a deal that was signed? The South Sudanese government is asking for 15 days. What do they hope to achieve in the 15 days? So I'll be speaking to South Sudan's Kenyan ambassador, Ambassador Mariano Dengor, to help us understand what the intricacies of this deal are all about, and if indeed the citizens of South Sudan can look forward to a peaceful nation. That's coming away in just a bit, but for now we're taking a short break. We'll be back. The South Sudan deal, what government and rebels agreed in Addis Ababa. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with KTN Prime. Let's cross borders and stay with South Sudan. And it is the continent's youngest state. And after years of struggle to break away from Sudan, South Sudan was a country that was full of potential and optimism of becoming one of the region's strong economic pillars based on its vast resources. So exactly what went wrong with South Sudan? Ben Kitili analyzes the fallout in the leadership of South Sudan.
On the 9th of July 2011, Africa's youngest country had been born, ending years of civil war. South Sudan gained its independence from the larger Sudan. It was the beginning of a new dawn, and the people's hope for a peaceful and steady economy was restored. But it would end soon, on August 11th in the same year. South Sudan experienced ethnic clashes leading to 600 people dying. It resulted to South Sudan and Sudan agreeing to set up several committees tasked with resolving their outstanding disputes in October the same year. In December 2013, factions emerged from the country's leadership after President Salva Kiir and his deputy Riek Machar fell apart. Machar would then lead a rebel group against the ruling government, and at the center of the conflict was a power struggle. Thousands would be killed and millions displaced, while the country's oil production failed drastically. In August 2014, peace talks began in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa and would drag on for months as fighting continued. The February 2015 general election, which were due in June, are called off because of the ongoing conflict. The February 2015 elections, which were due in June, were called off because of the ongoing conflict. The deadline for the peace talks agreement deal was slated for the 17th of August, a deadline that saw IGAD plus members engage in a 5-hour closed-door meeting late Sunday. Members of IGAD had expressed their collective commitment to bring back peace to South Sudan.
There's a deal that was signed today, but not all parties signed into that deal. That's why in studio tonight we have South Sudan's ambassador to Kenya, Ambassador Mariano Deng Ngor, to help us understand what is going on. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us on KTN Prime. Paint the picture for us. Is there a deal in place? I know the South Sudanese government asked for an extra 15 days. What does the government hope to achieve in 15 days?
The government wants to achieve a consultation on issues that a government has reservation upon, and which are mainly the majority representation of rebel in 3 states, the demilitarization of the national capital, the 2 commander-in-chief in the same country, and a little bit more.
The other thing that is concerning you is the rebels and whether or not they're a united front. They signed part of this deal, but the government is concerned about whether or not all of them are speaking the same language.
Right. When we actually committed ourselves to go to Addis at the onset, it was not clear that the rebels were divided. However, in recent days, it became very clear that most of the commanders in the ground do no longer, have Riek Machar as the leader. And if that is the case, the government have a responsibility to ensure that the peace agreement that could be reached in Addis Ababa is going to be respected on the ground, that the commanders of the rebel on the ground are loyal to rebel leader Riek Machar.
Allow me to pick your mind a little bit. What pointed to the fact that some of these commanders are not aligned to Riek Machar?
Well, they have made an announcement. It is their word. They have given a written statement, and they have also appeared on various, media side to make it clear that they no longer wish to be a part of his movement, and therefore they wanted to form their own movement. The government is responsible for all citizens, whether in rebel areas or in government administered areas of South Sudan, and the government wants to make sure that any peace agreement reached will lead to silence of gun in the country as a whole, especially those areas that have been affected by the war, and that the peace will be a sustainable peace so that our people can resume normal life and develop.
Mr. Ambassador, this is what is concerning me, because if you have commanders who are not aligned to Riek Machar and they sort of, to use your words, they want to form their own movement, this is a deal that was supposed to be signed between the South Sudanese government and the rebels. Where then does this leave the peace talks?
Well, peace talk can still continue, provided that we know who are these rebels and who are their leader and what do they want, so that their views can be accommodated. It is possible, it is doable. We have to remember that, you know, in Addis, as we had today, Riek Machar have signed, the leader of the former detainees have signed. There is no reason why one more or two more can sign, provided that there is a commitment.
You don't see a problem with that?
There is no problem with that. Let us first really identify the problem, and then we look at the problem and see how we can solve it. If you diagnose a problem, then you are actually on the path to solving it.
Mr. Ambassador, is there hope for South Sudan is there hope in these discussions, in these consultations between the rebels and the South Sudanese government, and now this faction that apparently is not aligned to Riek Machar? Is there hope for peace in South Sudan?
There is a hope for peace.
And this is the reason why I'm asking you. There's so many South Sudanese nationals in Kenya, and they probably would like to hear some sort of an assurance from the South Sudan's ambassador to Kenya. Is there hope?
There is a hope. You know that the government is committed from day one, when a communique was released in Kenya here on the 27th of December 2013. The government have made it clear, both to IGAD and the regional leaders, that the government is ready to negotiate with the rebel, and that is why President Salva Kiir Mayardit, the elected president, have always attended all peace talk and sit with the rebel. This is not done anywhere. Even during our 21 years of war, our leader, Dr. John, then never really sat in one meeting with al-Bashir. But President Salva Kiir Mayardit, being humble and want to serve his people, have always attended all the meetings, including the one that we are now talking about. He's in Addis. So
you basically represent him, and you're saying he's committed to these peace talks?
He's committed, absolutely, because he was elected by the people. He has over 93%, and that was really one of the highest and the first election ever held peacefully and supervised by the region and international community and certified as far as, as fair and free.
Now that
Where else can he go? He need to be with people.
Now that you're talking about election, the 2015 February general election was called off because of this conflict. Are there plans to ensure that there is a general election so that people can decide who their leaders are going to be, and how soon can they expect that?
Absolutely. President Kiir is a Democrat by nature. He had, initiated constitutionally the extensions of the term of government so that people can have a chance. Once a peace agreement is reached, then we will go through the process constitutionally and have all the prerequisites of holding a fair and free election, and have our people absolutely reach their decision as to who will lead the country and take the country forward. Mark my word.
Is there a time frame, Mr. Ambassador? Finally, before I let you go, is there a time frame for this?
A time frame will be set by the process of the implementation of the initial stage of the peace agreement, and then the preparation for election. It will be really unfair to actually decide in advance. Remember, we will also be listening to our, to stakeholders of this peace process and our neighbors as to what will constitute a fair way of allowing a process that meets the aspiration of the people, and free and fair, and above all, our population, the citizen of South Sudan, will dictate how long it will take. They will not be rushed. It is the people, demand, and
Okay.
you have to
South Sudan's
listen
ambassador to Kenya, Ambassador Mariano Dengor, thank you so much for speaking to us on
Thank
KTN Primat, for helping us to understand what essentially is going on in South Sudan. This
Thank you.
is a story we are keeping an eye on for you, and of course we'll keep letting you know as soon as we have any developments from South Sudan, the youngest nation in the world. Now, Deputy President's just concluded tour of Western Kenya is one that has been the subject of a critical debate in the region. So which way forward for the country's ailing sugar industry? Dorcas Wangira analyzes the Deputy President's tour and what it meant to cane farmers there.
The Deputy President's charm offensive in Western Kenya was largely centered on the Kenya-Uganda sugar deal.
Sasa wewe, hata kama hujui geography, kama sukari itatoka Uganda, itafika Kwale mbele ya kufika Busia na Kakamega. You start with where the problem is. Ama namna gani? Ndio tukasema ni vizuri tuwaeleze viongozi wa hapa wajue.
So what exactly is the problem? What really ails the sugar industry? In the larger Western Kenya sugar belt, the Mumias Sugar Company has been the center that holds the sector. According to James Luchacha, a mechanical engineer with 20 years experience at Mumias sugar mills and in industry, Mumias, fully revived, has the capacity to produce enough sugar even to cover Kenya's deficit.
What referred to as sugar barons buy that sugar at throwaway price and then undercut the local sugar market. That's where the real threat is. The sugar that's brought in, the dumped sugar that's brought in from abroad. Uganda sugar is not a threat to the Kenyan sugar market. The cost of production in Uganda should be the same as in Kenya. But that's where everything stops. In Uganda, most of their cane is plantation cane. And when it comes to plantation cane, economies of scale are very different. Coming back to Kenya, especially in companies like Mumias and Zoya, they have got small-scale farmers. Well, if you go to the Nyando belt, that's Kisumu area, you've got plantations there. So that could actually compete very favorably with Uganda in terms of cane production. But when you come to Mumias and so on, because of small holdings, and the economies of scale really work against them. Sugarcane crop in Kenya is one of the most heavily taxed products.
But even the yet-to-be-revived Mumias Sugar Company that recently received a government boost in the efforts to have it back in operation is pessimistic about how soon it will take to have the company back on its feet.
We've got a little hard times to come. Nobody's going to try and fool anybody. It's not going to be easy, but I believe we can make a plan to turn the company around. We have to face it. Kenya is a net sugar importer. So the sugar will come in. All we ask for is a fair market.
John Otini works with small-holding farmers on a public-private partnership basis.
In the event when all our factories are running, we still need to bring in sugar. And so I do agree that bringing in sugar from Uganda is inevitable because Uganda is our biggest trading partner. And there's no way we'll keep exporting things into their country, and they cannot be able to bring into a country. And sugar is one of the commodities that they do have to be able to bring in. And so what we are lacking in this particular sector, in my opinion, is really just streamlining. We are telling at least the 15,000 farmers that we work with, some of them who are growing sugarcane, is to be able to tell them the truth, because for us as a development organization, we engage with them devoid of the politics.
The opposition has since called this a PR exercise. According to Raila, Ruto's assertion that CORD had a hand in the fall of Mumias is misplaced.
The Jubilee government need to come clean about the sugar deal. The Jubilee are all the time in this habit of, if you say this, you unearth corruption, they say so and so is also corrupt. Two wrongs don't make a right. Right now we are talking about the Uganda sugar deal.
But the aftershocks of this visit directly affect the farmers and those who support them. Were they really convinced by the Deputy President?
Ununuzi ikitoka Uganda nitanunua, ya Kenya tununue, ya Ethiopia tununue. Afadhali tukazanie tu yetu hii. Hata kama ni bei ghali, tukazanie hii yetu, kwa sababu hii yetu Uganda hawawezi kuja hapa kwangu kuchukua miwa. Hapana, mimi niliona sisi turekebishe, alafu sukari tutumie yetu ya Kenya, sio sukari kutoka nje, sababu uchumi sasa utakuwa sasa unadidimia.
Forget about the other factors. Mumias alone going from 30% sugar production is currently doing in Kenya to where it belongs. Mumias is supposed to be producing 70% of Kenya's quota. If Mumias goes back to the Mumias that all of us know and are proud of, then there's nothing really to worry about.
Which way forward for this region, even as the sugar debate rages on? Dorcas Wangira, KTN News, Kakamega.
So there seems to be a crisis in the health sector in the country, with patients in several regions suffering, with some being on the brink of death, and that forms the basis of a question on KTN Prime tonight. We're asking you, do you think county governments are overwhelmed in the provision of health services? Emmanuel Chekobey says no. Go to the ground and you'll note that what county governments have done is remarkable. Charles Opil says it's a complicated mix of incompetent financial mismanagement, entangled wrangling and greed. David Maringa says it is evident that county governments cannot handle the health docket and they should stop playing cards with Kenyan lives. Finally, Egesa Elfas says nope, county governments are still in the process of implementing devolution. Those are just some of your opinions on our big question tonight on whether or not you think county governments are overwhelmed in the provision of health services. We're taking a short break on KTN Prime. Stay with us. We have more coming your way, including business news and sports.
Good evening and welcome to this edition of KTN Business. My name is Joy Doreen Bira. The government has committed 120 million shillings towards the establishment of a common leather manufacturing facility in Nairobi's Kariokor market. The facility will be shared among over 7,000 artisans in the market as the state seeks to scale up the quality and quantity of leather production and enable the artisans compete with other local and international leather producers. KTN's Charles Gitonga has that story.
Kenya's leather sector could be set for better days ahead as the government moves in to empower small merchants in the industry to produce and sell more. The government has identified Nairobi's Kariokor market as a leather cluster, producing over 8 million finished pieces of leather shoes, belts, sandals and bags. And the government has committed 120 million shillings for machinery to address the low degree of mechanization in the production process.
Nafikiri mambo ya mashini tunaweza kutafuta ili iwe kila kitu inafanana, iko standard moja, viatu unatengeneza asubuhi, iwe ni size moja na viatu unatengeneza jioni.
The Ministry of Industrialization and Enterprise Development also plans to separate the manufacturing and marketing area in the market in a bid to create space for over 7,000 traders who do business here. Kenya's leather sector thrived in its heydays over 2 decades ago, but years of poor policies have seen it almost grind to a halt. Today, demand for finished leather stands at 28 million units. However, Kenya exports 90% of its hide and skin in semi-processed form and only produces 4 million units of finished leather. Stakeholders in the sector believe various factors have led to this.
Supermarket zetu hazijawahi kutupatia nafasi. Kwa sababu utakuta ukienda kwa supermarket utakuta kama zinauza tu viatu za nje.
Kuna watu watumii original leather, wanatumia leather hii vingine ya plastic, sasa inakuwa ngumu kuuza kiatu. Sometimes sisi tunauza 600, unakuta wale wengine wanauza 300. Sasa hiyo inatupiga kabisa.
The marketing is a problem. So you find that most Kenyans will not appreciate local products. That is why you will find that people have branded their shoes, Ethiopian shoes, let's say Italian made, but they are Kenyans actually.
If Kenya's leather sector is to go back to its former glory, a lot of attention will have to be diverted towards these small businesses who produce millions of leather products every year amid a tough operating environment. Charles Gitonga, KTN News.
Thanks, Charles. Now, because of its numerous benefits, the mulberry plant has the potential of lifting smallholder farmers from poverty. The versatile plant can grow in both arable and arid as well as semi-arid areas and provides both fruits and leaves with medicinal value. Our reporter Philip Keitani spent a day with one such farmer and brings us a story of this farmer on the next frontier.
Little-known mulberry farming could soon be the next big money spinner for small-scale farmers in Kenya due to its multiple use and ease of growing. Meet Lucy, one of the few small-scale farmers already reaping big from the multiple advantages of mulberry plant.
Mulberry tree iko na faida nyingi. Iko na all the ingredients mwili ya binadamu inahitaji. Kwa hivyo ni mzuri kwa management ya mwili and ni curable for every disease.
However, even with numerous benefits, Lucy says the mulberry plant is one of the fruit trees that has greatly been overlooked and has not gained much attention in Kenya. She insists that the mulberry has the potential of lifting small-scale farmers from poverty.
Ni mti inajisaidia katika hali ya ukame. Maisha yake ni kutoka miaka 15 ama zaidi.
The plant is tolerant to many different kinds of soil and can thrive in a wide range of conditions. This tree will continue to produce unique oblong-shaped berries with a sweet flavor.
Kuna 1/4 of an acre. Aweza kapanda miti 1000 na mapato yake from that 1/8 ama those 1,500 trees. Kama nimeweka borea vizuri, hiyo matawi kwa wakati ya season kubwa sasa kama one season kama this season now you can see na nitapata zaidi 4,000 within one season. So for a year ikiwa managed na approach more than 800,000 shillings.
Lucy has also exploited other many products with medicinal value that can be derived from the mulberry leaves. According to her, the leaves are used by other farmers as animal feed, while the fruit can be used to make anything from jam, jelly, fruit sauce, cake and food color, yogurt to even wine.
Ukulima ni vizuri kutumia ile ukulima hali ya juu. Sababu kama una dryer utakuwa lazima wewe kwa mti chini ya kivuli. Na chini ya kivuli ya hiyo mti kuna ile kitu hizo hakuna hygiene nzuri. Kitu zinaweza pale tete madhara. Tena kwa kivuli ni mzuri kuliko jua. Tukiwa kwa jua itapoteza nutrients ama umuhimu ya dawa itaondolewa na Mungu katika jua. Ndio hii nyumba ni special na tumefunika na hii karatasi ya black. Hii direct of the sun ikikuja inakuta hii kitu ya black inarudi. Itakauka tu ikiwa green. Sisi tu iko fresh. Itakauka tu ikiwa green.
So far, research has been focused on the use of mulberry leaf extract as a significant medicine for type 2 diabetes as well as other health benefits. From a simple shrub, the mulberry plant has proven to be a jack of all trade, with the medicinal value from its leaves used to complement conventional drugs, and it's also known to improve the immunity of the body. Philip Keitani for the next frontier.
Medicinal value, they say, comes out of mulberries. Well, let's move on now to a rather related story. An unrelated story, rather. The Central Bank of Kenya's decision to put Dubai under receivership has opened a can of worms, with questions arising as to how the bank has survived years of multiple breaches of banking guidelines without regulatory action. The regulator put the lender under statutory management, citing serious liquidity and capital deficiencies just 2 months after the managing director fled the country. Dubai Bank had accumulated more than 5.3 million shillings in penalties, failed to meet cash ratio requirements and defaulted on paying 48 million shillings owed to Bank of Africa. CBK's supervision department staff had quietly been protesting Dubai Bank's continued operation after penning several adverse reports Dubai Bank has previously been accused of cooking its books and lying about its liquidity ratios. Moreover, the bank has also been accused of underproviding for its bad loans, resulting in its declaration of false profits. Dubai Bank now becomes the first lender in a decade to be put under statutory management. Now, the Kenyan shilling started the week on not a good note. Let's take a look at how it traded against other currencies and also a look at how the listed companies performed today. And that's it for KTN Business. Do join me again tomorrow for yet another edition of the top stories in the business world. For more news, log on to our website, ktnnews.com. I'm Joy Doreen Bira. Up next is Sport with Linda Ogutu.
Let's talk sports now. The Kenyan team to the World Athletics Championships jets out of the country tonight for the 2015 Global Showpiece, set to kick off on the 22nd of this month in Beijing, China. Commonwealth javelin champion Julius Yego is among the 50 athletes representing Kenya. Yego says his focus will be to bag a maiden podium finish at the World Athletics Championships.
Across Kenya and the whole world counts down to the World Athletics Championships in Beijing, China, set to go down the 22nd in Beijing. One of the athletes that the whole world will be focusing on is none other but the Commonwealth javelin champion Julius Yego, who has of course been very impressive this season. Yego, you'll be heading to the World Athletics Championships in say just a few days, and this time round you're not going there as just any other javelin thrower. You're going there as a title contender. How does that feel?
Thank you. No, it feels good when you're going for a big championship, and many people will be maybe looking at you, and it really feels good because I've really done well in the whole season, and now as we head for the World Championship it's now between me and the World Championship finals, and I'm really working on it. I'm really working on my technique to make sure that I remain at the top level.
Going to the World Championships, really, are you looking at how far you throw, or are you just focusing on the podium?
You know, when you go there focusing on what you have done is not good. My main focus here now is, the World Championship itself, and I'm praying to be in the podium. My main thing is to make sure that I am in the podium this time around. I have the African title, I have the Commonwealth title, so I'm really focusing on the World Championship to be in the podium, and being in the podium, if I win it, and then I'll be the happiest man. Is that we have qualification and the finals, and you have, I know for now I have to focus on making sure that I qualified for the finals. That will be on the 24th, and the final is on the 26th. I'm just focusing to make sure that I hit it right in my first attempt. Now I have the experience, and I've won some competition outside Kenya, and it really feels good when you are a winner. And but this one for the World Championship, it's a special one because everybody is really focusing on this in championship.
The Beijing World Athletics Championships fever is yet to be felt across the world as focus continues to be on widespread doping claims that have rocked the sport. Early Monday, a Turkish athlete got stripped of the 2012 Olympic women's 1500 meters gold medal for doping and banned for 8 years by the Court of Arbitration for Sport. CAS said the ruling related to abnormal values found in blood samples collected from the athlete between July 2010 and October 2012. So, do you think county governments are overwhelmed in the provision of health services? That was our big question tonight on KTN Prime. At Oliver Bide says county governments would do so much better if the central government cooperated with them. Paul Chang says the county guys are too proud to admit defeat, national government is reluctant to take back, and the people end up suffering. Baron of Matulu says yes, they thought healthcare was easy and cheap, took over the sector after years of underfunding by the government. Dominic Sagwe says no, we should find a way of abolishing fraudulent stroke greedy trade unions that are cheating civil servants. And at F. Noluga says 700 doctors were recently rejected by counties due to tribe. This is not factual. I'm not so sure this is factual, but it says 700 doctors were recently rejected by counties due to tribe, yet some hospitals have 0 doctors. This is a failure. This is information we need to verify, but all the same, thank you so much for watching KTN Prime. But just before we go, it is a month after the Financing for Development Conference took place in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. Over 190 UN member states met to finance developing countries to be able to transition from aid-dependent nations to self-sustained countries. But what exactly ails development in Africa? KTN's Joy Doreen Bira spoke to Dr. Mukhisa Kitui on how Kenya and indeed Africa can generate income to sustain its economies. Let's listen into a little bit of that interview that's coming away immediately after this bulletin.
Let us not just be talking about people helping us to produce more flowers and more tea for the export market. Let us start building capacity for made in Kenya. Cheap electronics are now being displaced in places like China because they are going into higher value manufacturing products. Some of the generics in pharmaceuticals, which were a major obsession of India, are now getting out of place because India has gone upscale. It is now competing on the mainstream pharmaceutical industry by purchasing some of the principles in Europe and America. These are opportunities for countries like Kenya to say, can we now go into this manufacture? Look at investment now for value addition, for manufacturing.
We'll leave it at that for now. Thanks for watching.